Checking in again with Quincy City Council President Nina Liang for an update on the first City Council meeting of the new legislative session. Hey, Nina.
Hello there.
Good to see you, and I hope you had a nice summertime break.
Yeah, it went by way too fast, and I'm still very much in denial that summer is officially over this week, right?
I'm afraid today is the last full day of summer, actually, yes.
Today is the last full day. Okay, yeah, no, see, going to be in full denial until snow hits the ground, I think.
Even though, pumpkins have been out for a month already.
You know what? And I actually love the fall season between spring and fall. I think it's definitely my favorite, right? It's not too hot. It's not too cold. Not a big fan of the pumpkin spice lattes. I hope folks don't hold that against me, but you're right. Like just seeing the fall decorations as I've been around door knocking has been really nice to see. Like it's just fall is always really nice, but yeah, no, trying to hold on to the good weather of summer at least, or what little of it we had anyways,
Yeah, well, let's hope fall is better than summer was. That's for sure, because it wasn't the best of summers in the weather department anyway.
It was not. No.
Tell me a little bit about. I know we talked about this on preliminary election night, but the council still meeting remotely, correct?
We are for now, yes. And again, this is something that we've talked extensively about. I know that school committee had done it successfully a few times with, a few bumps along the way, but as is anything with, uncharted territory with all of us, we've had a few hiccups as well. Doing, Zoom completely virtually, I think we all want to try to be back in person, ideally, right? We all, I think, would love to see one another again and be in the chambers again. And especially see, residents again, those who want to come and participate. But just like I was talking to you, Mark, about on election night last week, ultimately for us, it's about engagement and access and transparency of the work we do, right? Every single one of us, whether it's the at-large counselors or ward counselors, we prioritize making sure that anything that does get discussed is accessible to folks who want to tune in through QATV or tune in person, right? And if we were to move forward with the in-person option and not have a very reliable, consistent virtual option as well, right? Creating like a really good hybrid option. It's just not worth the risk dropping somebody who maybe can't hear the meeting or for whatever reason can't access the meeting or don't feel safe coming in person, right? And so I think as of right now, given the track record of the last year and a half doing it virtually, right? And people being able to call in, but on their phones, dial in on their computers, their iPads, whatever it may be, watch on TV through QATV as well. The success of that and the increased engagement of that really just gives me faith to say, okay, as of right now, this is the best and safest option moving forward until, again, we find out more information and it becomes safer to have it open completely to the public meeting in person. So until that happens, for now, it'll continue to be virtual.
Okay, very good. Good to know. And I know other boards and committees are doing the same thing as well in the city right now too. So everybody's in lockstep, I'm sure, in that thought process.
Yeah, and again, this isn't something that is set in stone, right? I think there's certainly, ways that we can explore hybrid options and just do sort of like a trial run and see what works and see what doesn't work, right? But again, it's maybe the trial run should be done offline because again, we don't want to risk ever having either a colleague on the council or somebody, a member of the public, not be able to tune in live during a meeting. Like that's not the time that we want to test these things out, right? We're going to test them offline and see if a hybrid option works. But as of right now, our focus is making sure that government is still running, that's still accessible. And as of right now, Zoom is the best way to ensure that 100%. So that's how we'll keep moving forward for now.
Okay, very good. So what happened last night?
Last night, there were a few items on the agenda that I think are really important, really pertinent right now. A lot of folks are really interested in, I think, what was presented to us last night, but they did move into committees. And so not unlike any other item that you and I have discussed in the past, when it goes into a committee, the chairs of that committee will host meetings separate from the council meetings to have an in-depth discussion, public input, public participation, presentations, questions, all of the above. So the items that were presented last night, went into committee. So we'll subsequently have individual committee meetings to discuss them.
Okay. A couple of ordinances proposed, a couple of gifts received, and then a resolve.
Yes. Yep. So the first two ordinances, and I'm just looking in front of me so that I get this verbiage correctly. So the first one was an ordinance presented by Ward 4 Councilor Palmucci on the use of public spaces in the Quincy Center District. And so I'm sure a lot of folks, if not everyone at this point in the city, has had an opportunity to go down into the center, into the square, check out Kilroy Square, which is over by where the Hancock Garage is, able to check out, obviously the beautiful area right in front of City Hall. And these are great gathering spaces, right? And there's been a lot of amazing events that have happened in both of those spaces. We've got the Quincy Farmers Market, we've got the beer garden, we had the beautiful dedication event. So there's a lot of different events that have been able to happen in that area. And so I think it's really pertinent that Councilor Palmucci was able to introduce something to talk about, okay, let's make sure that we have some sort of language so that people aren't confused as to, what can be used in this space and how it can be used for public gathering. And, it's just like anything else, right? When you have a new space, when you have something new, it's important to make sure that everyone's on the same page with how to access it, right? So that's an ordinance, goes into an ordinance committee. Mm-hmm. Again, we're going to have, public discourse. We're going to have dialogue amongst the councilors on this before we move forward with any vote or any decision on what that final piece of language looks like.
Okay.
The second was introduced by Ward 5 Councilor Phelan and the mayor. It's a continuation of the conversations that we had around Airbnb in the city.
Yep.
Let me correct that. I shouldn't say Airbnb. Airbnb is an example of it. It's conversations around short-term rentals, right? Yeah. But really essentially Airbnb and, Verbo and some of the other ones. But, this has been a long ongoing conversation by a number of folks, including, Ward 6 Councilor Bill Harris. I know that he's been a big champion on making sure that the issues that have risen in Ward 6 are being addressed. And, Ward 1 Councilor Dave McCarthy as well has been, on top of this. And so, we had moved on the ordinance and the language around regulating, short-term rentals in Quincy, but that also does tie directly to zoning. And so we now also have to update the language in our zoning codes for this. Oh. So this ordinance that was introduced doesn't change the regulations. The ordinance is now just sort of like next step to say, okay, here's the set of regulations around short-term rentals. It does, have to work within zoning. So now we have to update the zoning to reflect the new language and the new regulations. So again, that went into ordinance. Nothing was voted on in an ordinance committee, just like other items in ordinance, right? We'll have public discourse. We'll have a lot of conversations and dialogue amongst, the councilors and make any necessary changes before we vote on any final language. So what was introduced last night for both of these orders, like any order or ordinance that comes in, it's never the final language until we really get through it all in deep discussion in ordinance committee.
Yeah.
To your point, we had a couple of gifts that came in. Shout out to everyone who always is super generous in giving gifts. We get a lot of gifts that come through the council that go to the animal shelter, which is phenomenal. Gifts that go to the DARE program. And, there's a lot of community members. I encourage folks to take a look at the council agenda to see these community members. It's residents, nonprofits, business owners who donate to, again, things like the Quincy Animal Shelter, to the DARE program. And they're always very generous. So we give them a huge thank you for that. And then the last item on the agenda was resolved and introduced by Ward 2 Councilor Anthony Andronico. And again, this is something that a lot of folks, I think, had a lot of questions on and that we've been fielding a lot of questions and conversations on. So I'm grateful to my colleague, Councilor Andronico, for introducing this. But it's a resolve that essentially asks for, a breakdown of the spending of the pandemic relief funds that have come in, right? We've been seeing a lot of this on the news. I think at all levels of government, we've had relief funding come in and we're all curious to know how it's spent. And at the local level, the nice thing about that is that we have a lot of discretion, right? I mean, all politics is local, all government is local. And so, we are directly in touch with the impacts of what this money can do to support the community and to better the community as we try to get through what is still the ongoing pandemic. So, that being said, it's helpful for all of us to be on the same page and just know, how is that money being spent? Where is it being spent? And one of the important pieces that I think was really interesting that Councilor Andronico introduced is something that other cities and towns and the state is currently doing, which is soliciting input from residents. And so there's a way that we can do that. We're looking to explore that with this resolve. And again, I think it's a conversation that we as councilors have heard from everyone right? And so I think this is a really great next step to make sure that we're addressing that in a unified way.
Yeah, I asked the mayor about it this morning, actually. And he said, he's obviously open to suggestions and would be very happy to provide an update on how the funds are spent. However, didn't feel that formal public hearings would be appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, I think the nice thing about, I think in the past I've experienced in working with the mayor is that he's always open to collaborative efforts, right? But at the end of the day, he also is the day in, day out, 24/7 operator of this city, right? Ultimately, that's his role, that's his responsibility. And, he's done it well and he's done it for a long time, right? So again, I think for us, having this conversation and being able to just all again get on the same page with what we're doing moving forward with funding is really important because we do all respond to the same residents. We do have to answer to the same folks. And so, whether the public comment portion or, the public input portion is going to be something that happens, I think is something that we need to, at least on the council, explore as a possibility, right? And that's something that I think drives the work that we do. So it only makes sense for us then at this point to say, well, we do also want public input for this, right? Again, how that's going to work, if it's going to work, who knows? But it's our job to try to explore that and try to see what that looks like. If we want to solicit public input, if we want to engage the public in this conversation and how it's being spent, we are responsible for making sure that we're exploring how that would actually work in a tangible way, right? So that's part of it. I think it's important, right? People have asked, people are curious. Again, people have reached out to us and want to know. And it's just about, again, that transparency and engagement piece of it is really important for us and clearly very important for Councilor Andronica who introduced this. So that got passed last night as a resolve, but it's also in 2 different committees now. It's in Finance Committee, of course, because it has to do with spending, and it's also in our Oversight Committee. And so we're looking to get meetings scheduled and on the books as quickly as possible so that we can move forward with this conversation.
Oh, okay. Very good. Interesting. Is that typical for a resolve to go into other committees also?
Yes and no. Typically with a resolve, so the difference between a resolve and an ordinance, right, is that an ordinance is a piece of legislation. It's something that
it's a law, right? It's basically a law.
Exactly. Exactly. And so it does need to go into committee, and we do need to have the public hearings and the conversations around it. Finance items, obviously would go into Finance Committee. And so resolves are more of like a declaration or an ask, right? It's not a law, right? It's essentially something that we as a body, if it's voted on and approved, are sort of making a statement on or making an ask on. So with this resolve, we collectively, unanimously voted that we do want to have this engagement process with the funding, right? We do want to know where it's being spent, how it's going to be spent. We do want to explore public input and public engagement on this, right? That's something that we, as a body, resolve to move forward on. So it does pass in that sense. But what we've been doing is that if we want the formal follow-up in council, in committee, we're putting it into committees so that we can schedule committee meetings and continue that conversation. And with an item as important as this, it is absolutely important that we continue to have formal conversations as a body in the council for this item, right? And so by putting it into committee, we're able to do so. And again, in a formal way that allows for public engagement, gets put out there as an agenda item so that everyone knows what's going on. So just by putting resolves into committees, it really codifies this process to say, we are definitely going to move forward as a body to have formal conversations around this.
Okay. Yep. Put some teeth behind it, essentially, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, look, we can certainly, and we always have had community meetings on a number of issues over the years and still continue to do so, right? So in a sense, we could always host a community meeting, right? But for me anyways, and this is, my personal take on it, if we're calling for a committee meeting, as a council body, it's a much more formal process that I think, has a lot more reach for folks to participate and engage in the process than hosting a community meeting that might be a little bit more informal, right? And so again, for me anyways, personally, if I can, we'll go for the more formal process where we can engage more people and just have, I think, more in-depth dialogue. So that's, again, having this go into committee, I think is really important.
Okay. Were those meetings scheduled yet, Nina, or is that still to be determined? They
are not. We do have our formal council meeting scheduled right now. We're meeting next Monday, as well as the Monday after that. And then these committee meetings, they can be scheduled outside of those meetings or maybe the same night of. We need to make sure we're coordinating with the 2 committee chairs as well as our auditor. And we're hoping to do that as soon as possible so that we can get a meeting on the books.
Gotcha. Okay, good. Very good. Thanks for that explanation and update. That's good. Speaking of the animal shelter, by the way, I again spoke to the mayor this morning, and the cost for that and for the police station is going up dramatically. He said because of the pandemic. He did say he expects to come back to the council to request additional funding for both projects. How do you feel about that?
I think it's like anything else. Like I think when we talked about this before, right? One of our, I think, most impactful roles on the council is, approving the budget, approving spending, or cutting from it, right? And so, not like any other spending item that comes in front of us, I think whether it's with this and, there's this dramatic uptick in spending, or it's an item like a gift that's going to go to the animal shelter or DARE, right? Whatever that is, it's a financial order that comes in front of us. We need to look at it and make sure that we're doing our due diligence, right? If the numbers are going up dramatically because of construction costs or labor, whatever that may be, okay, let's look at it, let's evaluate it, and let's go through and make sure that we get all of our questions answered on it, right? Before we move forward. This, $3,725 gift that came in, we still look at that. We see, okay, who donated? Where is the money going, right? And so it doesn't matter if it's a $3,000 gift or it's a $300 million request. I'm not saying that that's what the cost is. I'm just throwing out numbers because I haven't seen it yet. We really had to look at all of the spending with a fine tooth comb, and that's my approach with this. I mean, is it unfortunate to hear that it's much, much more than originally anticipated? Of course. Yeah, that's never something that you want to hear, right? It's like if you get a call from National Grid and it's like, hey, your bill is going to go up next month, right? Never want to hear that. You never want to hear that. So, does that make me a little bit anxious? Of course it does, but my approach is going to be what it always has been, and what all of our approaches has been, which is let's go into it with a fine tooth comb and see what's going on and make sure that we get all our questions answered before we move forward with anything on this, if at all,
Okay, I'll wait and see. Speaking of committee chairs, any change in that this session?
Nope. Everyone who is currently sitting on the chairmanships of their committee are still the committee chairs. Okay,
very good. Anything else we should let folks know about right now, Nina?
No, a lot of fun events happening this weekend. Porch Fest is going to be going on, and so I encourage folks to check that out. It's finally back, thank goodness. It's going to be from 3 p.m. until I believe 8 p.m.
9 p.m. actually.
9 p.m. Even better. And then we also have, of course, every Saturday, the Quincy Square Market at Kilroy Square. And the Wollaston Hill Neighborhood Association is still doing their Saturdays in the park at 3 o'clock as well. So what I encourage folks to do is start at the Quincy Square Market in Kilroy Square, in Quincy Center, grab some lunch, hang out, enjoy the beautiful weather. And then from there, go over to Wollaston and check out the Saturdays in the Park with the Wollaston Hill Neighborhood Association. And then from there, just bounce around and check out all of the bands for Porch Fest, right? I mean, you can't beat it. Like this is one of the things, again, that I love about this city is how there are so many different residents and community organizations that come together to, create incredible opportunities for residents, right? I mean, it's a phenomenal thing to see happen. So thank you for letting me plug that. I hope folks will go and check it out and fill their Saturday with a lot of Quincy fun.
Yeah, and actually today, as we speak, the Quincy Farmers Market will be celebrating their 40th anniversary on board the USS Salem. So
yes, that's later on today. Yes, thank you for reminding me. I cannot believe how much time has gone by. They've done a phenomenal. They've been through a lot. I mean, they've been through quite a lot with a lot of different changes and having to move around, but they have been just phenomenal in creating such a gem here in the city, right? Like people don't have to drive out to, Western Mass, the North Shore, the South Shore to grab some really good produce and some really good eats, right? And so I think they've done a phenomenal job over there. Kevin and Janet have just been absolute workhorses in getting that done. So yeah, the anniversary celebration is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and they're, as you mentioned, Kilroy Square, they're there every Friday from like noon to 5:30 too, right through almost Thanksgiving. So they're not done yet.
Nope, not for a long time.
Nina, good to talk to you. Appreciate the update.
You too. I'm sure I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you next week.
You will. Yep. It'll be my pleasure.
Good. We'll see you then.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.